Good evening and welcome to We Will Be Heard, Stories to End Gender-Based Violence. In this program, survivors and perpetrators of gender-based violence share their stories through digital media. We'll take a look at all of these stories and a particular theme in every episode and hope to drive change around the issue of gender-based violence. To do this, in each episode, we'll discuss a particular theme and a particular story. And I'm joined in studio today by three very special guests from the Saartjie Baartman Center. On my left, Ms. Dorothea Gertse, a social worker. Dorothea, welcome.
Thank you.
Also joining us is Shameen Bray, a children's counselor from the center. Shameen, welcome. Also on my right, Ms. Goosen, who runs the Shelter for Women and Children at the Saartjie Baartman Center. Welcome to the show. Before we begin, let's take a look at Abdullah's story from Sierra Leone.
I was raised in a Muslim home and my father had 4 wives. I did not know my mother because she left my father when I was a baby and died when I was 6. I saw violence at home, school, and community, especially when my father was beating his wives, including me. My whole life had been a lonely path. I don't mingle with friends, play football, ride bicycle, and when I do any of this activity, my father will beat me up, telling me all sorts of abusive languages, referring to my mother as a prostitute. To learn Quran was the best thing for my father, so Western education was not his priority. He refused to pay for my schooling, and I was late for school because I had to do all the domestic work like washing dishes and fetching water. I had to do business selling second-hand clothes to support my education. I got married at 16, thinking that if I get somebody by my side doing business to support me, I will be able to attend school. I was the head boy of the school by then, so lots of responsibility rested on me, especially the organization that I have started called Tangible Academic Youth Forum Organization, Tapfuma. I wanted to prove my dad wrong about what he had been telling me and my mother. But unfortunately for me, business was not going the way I expected to be, so I had to struggle again. One day, the school told everybody to start putting on black shoes, but I don't have the money for these shoes. One of the teachers used to beat me every morning because I didn't have the right shoes. Because of this, I abandoned the school and went back to do the business with a frustrated mind, which I will never forget. A few months later, a friend came to pay a visit at my business center. He said to me, "Abdullah, you know you have started a project in school, which is a good idea that everybody was looking forward to." Then I said to him, "Man, I don't think I will be able to join you guys. I have to care for my home. If I leave the business, who will support my family?" Then the friend told me, "Just have faith with this project, you will surely make it." So this was how I came about getting connected with organizations, coalitions, and network advocating for the human rights of people, particularly women and children. Today, I am an advocate on their behalf on issues including harmful traditional practices, particularly female genital mutilation or cutting. And this has made me to be recognized by giving me an award for the most outstanding youth activist of the year 2011.
I'm sure you've been faced a lot with the situation where a child comes into your office and they tell you stories of violence that they've encountered at home. How do you deal with that situation?
Well, every child is different, so you can't really deal with the whole situation. But for the first few sessions, it's just to let them talk about it and explore their feelings. And after that, I teach them the skills that they need to cope with their anger, sometimes they go into a depression. So it's the different life skills that they need. So we'll do that in the sessions.
Dawn, what was your reaction to the story from Abdullah?
Okay, I would agree with Dorothea that through an adverse experience like Abdullah had been through right throughout his childhood, even experiencing bullying at school and then the reactions from teachers at school, he gained the strength within himself and he used that strength to turn it into something positive. So for me, it shows that within the human spirit, there is that strength that you can turn a very negative situation into something positive, and it's not always just reliant on somebody else having to intervene, but it's really about the choices that are being made.
What struck out for me a lot is the other forms of abuse that he seemed to suffer, not just physical abuse, but the emotional abuse of him being told by his father that his mom was a prostitute, etc., etc. What other forms of abuse are there besides physical and emotional?
Well, I think physical is the most obvious and the most talked about because of the fact that the signs are there, and so it's quite visible what the person has been through. On the emotional and the psychological side, it's a bit more complicated because one cannot see the scars and the impact of how that has affected the person. However, it's very often far more deeper reaching and with more long-term effects than if it were a physical injury. However, apart from that, our clients often also experience financial abuse, which is where finances are being controlled or withheld from the victim, and she's then made to be dependent on this person, which very often also perpetuates the situation, makes her stay in an abusive environment far longer, because she has no resources in order to get out and fend for herself and her children. There are also intimidation and threats where she's being, verbal threats are made, and then verbal abuse where she's being sworn at and put down and so on, and where she's being isolated, so she's maybe being locked up or kept away from her support system and people that can maybe assist her with getting out from the situation.
Dorothea, do you see any other forms of abuse that were faced by not just Abdullah, but maybe other people in that story?
What is very evident from the story is that where his behavior, and I don't think just his, but also other people in the household, where their behavior has been controlled. When we look at abuse, when we look at domestic violence, control plays a major role in the abuse because the perpetrator uses that to kind of that limits what you as the victim can do, where you can go, what you can say. And that is what I also see in the story. He was very much controlled by his father, and he also speaks about the other wives in the household that has been controlled. And I think that is a form of abuse that comes out very strongly.
In Abdullah's story, he mentions how his mother left the house. And sometimes it's very difficult for women who are being abused violently to leave the house. What kind of advice would you give to a woman who's being abused in order to help her get out of the situation?
I would say she'll have to seek help. There's so many resources here in Western Cape, and that would be the first step, and then we take it from there. But I wouldn't say she should leave her children. I mean, we are center, we take the women and the children. So to take the children away from that violent home is also very necessary.
If someone is seeking advice from me and they're in that situation, what would be the best thing for me to say to them?
For you to say would be, I would say just tell them about all the different resources that there are, like our center, there's legal aid if they need legal advice, there's a lot of other centers, and yeah.
When we bring people to the shelter, what kind of help do they receive?
People receive help on just every level when they do come to the center. Very often women arrive with just the clothes on their back, having fled from a very dangerous situation. So from the very basic needs in terms of clothing, food, toiletries, those kinds of needs just to get them going. We also provide a counselling service to assist them on an emotional and psychological level and to help them debrief and just cope with the experience of having left home and come to the centre. We also offer a legal service where they receive legal advice around seeking protection orders and maybe maintenance issues, divorce matters, that can also just guide their decision making in terms of how they want to proceed. Part of our program also offers skills development and training so that while she is in the shelter, if it is a woman who is perhaps unemployed, she can receive training in various skills depending on what is on offer at any given time. And through those programs, then she receives assistance with potential job placements as well.
Dorothea, in many cultures in South Africa, it's believed that even if you suffer abuse, emotional, physical, that you need to stick it out. If you're a woman, stick it out in that marriage, and because you don't leave your husband, just be strong. Are we seeing a shift in that regard here in South Africa, or is it still like that?
Yes, I do believe that we are seeing a shift. Our cultural backgrounds or our different cultures does play a role, and I do see it with a woman coming to the centre. They will tell me it's part of my culture. I can't leave my husband. We need to consult with the elders first, and they will solve the problem. But what is happening now over the past years is that we do get more women coming forward, leaving the perpetrator, looking for shelter, looking for help. And I think the awareness that we and other organizations are doing, it does have an impact because we are seeing that shift.
Shameen, we saw in the story that Abdullah started his own organization to try and educate people around gender-based violence. Could that be a form of counseling in itself for people who've been exposed to violence to get involved in organizations that are trying to educate society?
Yes, definitely. Outreach projects always help yourself as well as helping other people. And I think what he did was really breaking this whole cycle of when a child is abused or sees violence in the home. If he can also try and help other people and make other people aware of what is happening, it helps him as well as so many other people around you.
Dawn, if someone believes they're being abused or they're in a violent situation at home, what course of action should they take?
If somebody is feeling unsafe within their home and they need to seek a place of safety to go to, we are a 24-hour centre, so we provide a 24-hour emergency response. There's always someone on duty who would be able to receive the woman into the centre. And she would then, the next day, have access to the counselling services and the advice provided to her. So if someone is unsafe and their life is in danger, I would say to approach a centre such as ours. For those who perhaps don't know about the resources, don't know where we are located, the closest police station is also always a good bet, and to ask for assistance that way.
Before we say our goodbyes, I just want to go around the room and get your final thoughts on the story that we've seen from Abdullah in Sierra Leone. We'll start with you, Dorothea.
I think the story, as I've said at the beginning, it's very powerful. It teaches us a big lesson. It shows us that how the cycle can be broken. I think it is important for people, for our communities, to see this, to understand what it is about. I think it is important for our next generation, for our children, for our youth to understand the story, to understand that they don't have to continue the abuse. And yes, sometimes it is difficult as a child, as a young man, having all this anger, having all this frustration, because you have been abused yourself, not knowing what to do. But there are services, there are people out there. You basically just need to reach out and say, this is my situation. I don't want to turn out like my father or whoever. Please help me.
Shameen?
Yeah, I agree with Dorothea. There's always a choice in everything, and it's always better to take that option. I mean, if you think about it, what you've been through, I'm pretty sure you don't want your child to go through that, and always maybe look at it from that perspective. Rather seek help for yourself so that you don't get into that situation as well.
Are there ways for people who've been abused to blow off the steam that Dorothea is talking about? They're frustrated like Abdullah was in the story. What are the ways that they can let out all of that frustration?
Well, I think with his story, the way he let out his frustration was he went into a business and he started being an activist. And I think doing things like that to take your mind off everything, it really does help you blow off the steam and keeps your mind occupied so that you don't feel so frustrated. So I think an important way to try and not get frustrated is to just do something to take your mind off it that's worth your time.
Dawn?
I think Abdullah's story is one of many such stories that I'm sure lots of people can identify with. In saying that, I think it is everyone's responsibility to try and make efforts in order to break the cycle of violence. Organizations such as the Saartjie Baartman Center, we go to lengths in order to raise awareness and advocate for or against gender-based violence, but I think it is responsibility of everybody in our communities, us as individuals, in how we relate to one another and how we raise our own children with respect and tolerance for the opposite gender.
Dorothea, we've heard from Dawn what the course of action to take would be if you're ready to step out of a violent home and leave that situation. But like we said earlier, many people aren't ready to take that step yet. Can they still get help even if they don't want to get out of the house?
Yes, definitely. And I think it is very important for women to know this. And it is also important for people to understand that it's not easy just to walk out and leave. A lot of the women who are being abused, they have acknowledged that they are being in an abusive relationship, but they are not yet at the point of leaving. What we would say to those women, there are services out there, there are supportive services. At the Saartjie Baartman Center, we've got a walk-in center, which means that they can come to the center without making an appointment, where they can receive counseling. The counseling basically will assist them in terms of support, in terms of educating them about their rights, options that they can explore, and also helping them to prepare should the day come where they have to leave, what would be the next step.
Unfortunately, that's all we have time for, but ladies, thank you very much for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Dorothea. Thank you, Shameen, and thank you, Dawn. We hope that tonight's show helps to drive conversation around gender-based violence and helps us to change the scourge of gender-based violence. My name is Tapfuma Makina. Thank you and good night.